Hello, I'm the Irresolute Cartographer, and this is a review of Episode 2 of the Fallout TV show. As with the first video in this series, I intend to cover each of the sections of the episode in turn, giving a broad strokes plot summary, a listing of the good, the confusing, and the bad aspects of each section. I'll also detail anything I think is lore-breaking and anything that has been added to the lore of the universe. Lastly, I'll list the character details given in each section for each character. That being said, let's get started. Before going into analysis, as it's never mentioned in the show, for the benefit of the uninitiated in the Fallout universe, I need to explain what the Enclave is. The Enclave is the embodiment of the military-industrial complex in the Fallout universe. Before the war, its leadership was composed of the CEOs of the wealthiest corporations, high-ranking military officers, and powerful politicians. They controlled the government before the bombs and are the only legitimate remnant of the American government in the aftermath. The faction has made appearances in every Fallout since Fallout 2, and has had bases across the country, primarily at old military installations and government bunkers. With that said, let's get going with Section 1. Sometime between 2295 and 2296, Dr. Siggy Wilzig, an Enclave scientist, raises a dog named CX-404. He injects some unknown piece of tech into the back of his head. When another Enclave scientist notices that the tech is missing from containment, he accosts Dr. Wilzig and sounds an alarm. Seeing her master attacked, CX-404 kills the other scientist. Dr. Wilzig and CX-404 then flee the Enclave together. On to the good aspects of this scene. First, there's excellent use of Into Each Life Some Rain Must Fall as performed by the Inkspots, a song that was part of the Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 licensed music. Second, the scene starts with the Enclave incinerating newborn puppies and almost comically evil action to show the uninitiated that the people they're looking at are evil. The scene also shows how by the book most Enclave members are, giving Dr. Wilzig's humanity a point of contrast. Third, the Enclave security team's uniforms are the perfect mix of mid-century American military and fascistic. Fourth, the last scene with the turret is hilarious, both with the "please remain calm" message and the fact that every single shot misses Wilzig and CX-404. On to the confusing. Again, these are things about which I had questions and that I want to see addressed in future seasons. First, for what purpose are dogs like CX-404 trained? Were the dogs simply being trained to be attack dogs, or does the Enclave have something else in mind? Was Wilzig allowed to have CX-404 as he did? He appears to have kept the dog's sleeping place hidden, making it seem as though he was trying to hide her. Second, how did this cell of the Enclave survive the destruction of much of the Western forces of the Enclave in Fallout 2? Third, what drove Wilzig to make a break with the Enclave? He calls the man who attacks him a fascist as an insult, and it's clear that he makes the decision to run after CX-404 kills the man, but he had already inserted the tech into his neck, an act that is eventually revealed to be in the service of carrying it to others in the Wasteland. On to the bad aspects. The first point is minor. The left side of Wilzig's chalkboard is like something you'd see in a Psych 101 classroom, detailing the basics of behavior modification. This doesn't seem like something you'd see in a lab like Wilzig's. Second, there's no Enclave symbolism here. In their bases in the games, you can see E-sigils and Enclave flags. We're not seeing the whole base here, of course, but aside from being told that Siggy has run from the Enclave, there's nothing indicating that this is the Enclave. Beyond this, as mentioned before, there's not even a mention of what the Enclave is. On to the lore aspects. I didn't see anything necessarily lore-breaking. That said, we do see an Enclave base here that has survived on the west coast after the fall of Navarro in Fallout 2. This base sits on a rail line that has train cars prepared for live cargo. The base is a multi-level structure that has a transparent roof, and the roof of the building is covered in snow, and from the background it appears to be in a mountain range or in the foothills. At a minimum, the base appears to be selectively breeding and training dogs, testing the forced evolutionary virus on human subjects, and doing something with a piece of technology that Wilzig injected into his head. We won't cover what that tech is until episode 8. On to the character aspects laid out by this section. From the events of this section, we know that Siggy Wilzig was an Enclave scientist who grew to hate the Enclave. Along with this, we know that he has much more of a heart than his former colleagues. Not only did he save CX-404 from incineration, but the tech he's smuggling out of the Enclave is something extremely important. We also learn that CX-404 is a good girl who loves her teddy bear and her master Wilzig. On to Section 2. Having left Vault 33, Lucy McLean walks up the coast on her first day on the surface. After passing old shipwrecks and ghost towns, she lights a campfire and settles down for the night. She's awakened by the sounds of a dog growling and sees CX-404 attacking a nearby radroach. Lucy then meets Dr. Siggy Wilzig, who tells her to go home. When she refuses, he tells her she will have to adapt to survive. Dr. Wilzig and CX-404 then leave her and walk off into the darkness, the unknown piece of tech pulsing blue in Wilzig's neck. On to the good. First, there's excellent use of Don't Fence Me In as performed by Bing Crosby and the Andrews sisters. a song that was part of the Fallout 76 licensed music, and probably should have been part of the Fallout New Vegas licensed music. Second, this is a terrific way to introduce viewers to the mutated creatures of the Wasteland by starting with one of the smallest, the radroach. Third, this section shows off Lucy's naivety and makes Wilzig appear mysterious. Lastly, the on-location shooting in Namibia really pays off, as the real ghost towns and shipwreck look great here. There is a confusing aspect to this part, but it only reveals itself in the last section of the episode, so we'll cover it then. As I didn't see anything bad here, let's move on to the lore aspects. I believe that this is the first time we get a definition of everything that makes a radroach different from a cockroach. Though they've always obviously been bigger than cockroaches, we've never had it laid out how they have evolved since the war. Dr. Wilzig lets us know they have enlarged thorax to ward off attack, extended antennae in order to hunt in packs, incisors to help ingest larger prey. Let's cover new characteristics before moving on. From this section, we know that Lucy has basic survival skills, which make an appearance when she builds a fire despite never having had a need to in the vault. Despite this, we also see that she is, at this point, quite unprepared for the dangers of the surface world. The fact that she lets her gun lie out of reach as she sleeps is a real marker for this. As for Dr. Wilzig, we learn that despite appearing to have lived a fairly cloistered life in the Enclave, he is aware of the outside world. Along with this, it's clear that he cares about the survival of strangers. Beyond this, he has an impressive knowledge of bugs, such as the radroach. Lastly, CX-404 shows herself to be an excellent hunter of radroaches. On to Section 3. Knight Titus and Squire Maximus fly across salt flats on their way to search for the Enclave defector in Philly. As they get closer, and their path takes them over scrub-covered hills and forest, Titus has the Verte Bird pilots drop them off, leaving them to trek the remainder of the distance to Philly. On to the good. I really appreciate the imagery of the Verte Bird flying over the salt flats. I believe these were the Bonneville salt flats, which aren't far from Wendover Airport, where the Flatlands camp scenes were filmed. This scene did an excellent job of depicting Knight Titus as a despicable character and starting the disillusionment of Maximus to the organization he idolized. On to the confusing. The Verte Bird flies low for most of the flight, and I'm not 100% sure why. The lower an aircraft flies, the worse its fuel efficiency. It also puts the aircraft at more of a risk of small arms fire, although the area over which they pass is quite uninhabited. In truth, I imagine they don't fly too high because the cabin isn't sealed, so it would get quite cold and could become hard to breathe. Beyond this, the only reason I imagine they fly so close to the ground is that they expect engine failure, at which point they would have a shorter fall, and I imagine a crash would be less devastating. There wasn't anything I didn't like here, other perhaps than the pilot helmets not having windscreens, but other than that, let's move on to the lore. I didn't see anything lore breaking here, but there are a couple pieces of new lore. First, Brotherhood Verte Birds now have winches for lifting and lowering power armor clad soldiers. Next, whatever the original purpose intended for these loops on the chest plate of the T-60 power armor, the Brotherhood has effectively turned them into carabiners to allow the knights to temporarily carry squires. Let's cover new characteristics before moving on. In this section, we learn that Titus is petty, impatient, uses intimidation to get his way, is reckless, and ignores orders when they displease him. We also see reinforcement of the concept that Maximus admires knights and obeys the chain of command. On to Section 4. Dr. Wilzig and CX-404 stop to rest for a moment in a forest clearing. As Wilzig changes out of his lab coat and opens a can of food, CX-404 goes scavenging and returns with a human hand. When Wilzig sees this, he hears animal sounds and notices piles of bones in the area. The two of them move on quickly. On to the good. I enjoyed seeing the can of cram, although I will note that the label looks like it's in strangely perfect condition for being at least 219 years old. That's pretty much it for this section as it's short, so let's move on to Section 5. Knight Titus and Squire Maximus arrive in the forest clearing just vacated by Dr. Siggy Wilzig and CX-404. In investigating the items left behind by Dr. Wilzig, they enter a nearby cave and come under attack by a Yaogwai, or mutated bear. Knight Titus is wounded by the bear before Maximus can kill it. When Titus threatens Maximus, Maximus chooses to let the knight die rather than provide him aid. On to the good. First, the fact that this cave is filled with radioactive waste is perfect for the Fallout universe. Such a thing is a common occurrence that shows the lax safety and environmental regulations of the world. Next, the damage sustained by Knight Titus feels a lot like the video games, as in most of it doesn't really make sense given the fact that he's wearing power armor. I understand him knocking himself out to an extent, but the fact that he's bleeding into his lungs feels like the game where you sustain general damage from attacks. On to the bad aspects of the scene. Titus complains about how dangerous the Wasteland is, but he's the one who chose to depart from the Verte Bird early rather than ride it to their destination. It doesn't feel consistent with his cowardly behavior in the cave. I think the best explanation for this act is that he's a moron. On to new lore. First, I want to note that in the past we've seen Brotherhood Knights operating in the Wasteland without squires. Their dependence on them for things as important as stimpaks feels like a new thing. Second, the punishment for disobedient squires as described by Knight Titus seems to be the Blood Eagle, a form of execution depicted in Old Norse texts. Either he's being hyperbolic or the Brotherhood has really stepped up their execution game. Let's cover new characteristics before moving on. In this section, we learn that Titus is a coward who refuses to take blame for his mistakes. We also learn that Maximus despises those who dishonor the Brotherhood, and he's a good shot. On to section 6. Lucy meets a Wastelander who informs her of the presence of the town of Philly over the next hill. On to the good aspects. Lucy is learning, becoming less naive. Her approach of the Wastelander with her gun drawn is somewhat comical, but also a sign that she's becoming more careful. Second, the Wastelander attempting to make water from sand with a water purifier is a great representation of the ridiculous nature of many Wastelanders. I didn't see anything in this scene that confused me or that I didn't like. Beyond this, aside from learning that Philly is a rough town, we don't really learn anything new in terms of lore. As for character aspects, Lucy is becoming less naive, but is still too trusting when it comes to sharing limited supplies. On to section 7. With Knight Titus dead, Maximus puts on his former master's under armor and gets into the T-60 suit. After playing around with the suit's capabilities, he comes across a scene of violence in which he intercedes. On to the good. First, there's excellent comedic use of Betty Hutton's It's a Man, a song from the Fallout 4 licensed music. Second, this is the first appearance of the Snake Oil Salesman, a hilarious character that many have called Fallout New Vegas' Wild Wasteland perk in a person. It also shows the problem of intervening in a situation without understanding everything that's happened. On to the confusing. I don't know when the jets of flame from the wrist became part of T-60 armor, but they're new. I didn't see anything I didn't like here, nor was there any new lore aside from the existence of these wrist jets, which we'll talk about more in the next section. As for the character building, Knight Titus has died. Meanwhile, Maximus, after his little joyride in the T-60, immediately starts to attempt to embody a knight. On to the next section. Lucy arrives in Philly. After fruitlessly attempting to get a lead on her father from a merchant, Ma June, she runs into Dr. Wilzig in CX-404 again. As Ma June attempts to get Wilzig inside, the ghoul makes his presence known and blows off the doctor's foot. After a gunfight, the ghoul stabs an attacking CX-404, and Lucy attempts to intercede on Wilzig's behalf. She is nearly killed before Squire Maximus arrives and draws the ghoul's fire. Lucy helps Wilzig inside where he's given a prosthetic foot, and she's given a mission to bring him to Moldaver. Outside, the ghoul defeats Maximus by damaging his armor, but the distraction has caused him to miss the departure of Wilzig. On to the good parts of the scene. First, Philly looks like a mix of Diamond City and Megaton, giving newcomers to the universe a good idea of what to expect from Wasteland towns. Second, in a part that is both good and bad, there are at least 4 editions of the Wasteland Survival Guide here, as found in Fallout 4. I say good and bad as, though it's cool to see, the first edition on screen, number 5, is the guide to Diamond City, a settlement in the very distant Commonwealth. I can't imagine why this would appeal to people outside the Boston area. Third, the person who laughs at Lucy as she walks into town appears to be dressed like Piper, a companion from Diamond City in Fallout 4. Fourth, the props in this scene are excellent. The giddy-up Buttercup, the bowling pins, the guns, the Pip-Boys, the Vault-Tec party hat, the magazines, the mini-nuke. Fifth, it's interesting to see the dentist-barber sign in the marketplace, as it indicates that the old profession of barber-surgeons has returned to the world. Back in the Middle Ages, barbers, who carried razors and were quite dexterous, were called on to provide surgical services. This included tooth pulling. It's neat to see this little detail. Let's now cover the confusing aspect of this scene. There are hairy animals in the world. Outside of Philly, Lucy saw normal-looking goats, and within Philly, she saw a Brahmin, the 2-headed cow for the uninitiated. The odd part of this is that the Brahmin she passed in the marketplace had hair. We haven't seen this before, and I'm not sure how to explain this oddity. From Fallout 76, we know that the first generation of cows born after the war were born Brahmin. 2-headed, red-skinned, hairless cattle. Up through Fallout 4, this has been the case. I'm not sure how to explain the fact that this Brahmin has hair. As a side note to this, there was a fully feathered chicken in the last section of the first episode that was strange. Regardless, let's move on to the bad aspect of the scene. Just one thing here really. Wilzig and Lucy both have plot armor. So does Maximus, but that fact doesn't come up until the 8th episode, so for now we'll just handle Wilzig and Lucy. It seems to me that the minutes of lying on the ground, bleeding without a lower leg, would likely be fatal for Wilzig. As for Lucy, the ghoul stops shooting to listen to her speak instead of simply blowing a grapefruit-sized hole in her. I'm glad that neither Wilzig nor Lucy died in this scene, it just seems highly unlikely that they would have made it out alive. On to the lore-breaking aspects. First, the visor of the T-60 power armor now opens. This might be new lore rather than lore-breaking, but regardless, this is not something we've seen before in the Fallout universe. Power armor was meant to be a walking tank. The visor opening in the front of the helmet is a massive weak point. Not only is this a potential leak point where toxic gas could get in were the seal not complete, but in a later episode we see that it can be triggered to open from the outside. When I said this might be new lore, I meant that the Brotherhood may have added this feature to their helmets, but it's new and goes against the purpose of the armor, so I'm leaning towards this being lore breaking. Second, the T-60 power armor now has jets in the wrist that allow the suits to fly. Jetpacks were added to power armor in Fallout 4 and they exist in Fallout 76 as well. In fact, power armor changed a lot from the Fallout 3 and New Vegas versions to the Fallout 4 and 76 versions. This is easily explained as the 3 and New Vegas versions were limited by the technology of the game engine, while the power armor in 4 and 76 more closely matches the lore. That said, the jetpacks added in 4 and 76 are bulky external items added like backpacks to power armor. This is the first time we've seen it integrated into the wrists of the suits. While this might be an innovation by the Brotherhood, I have trouble believing that these two small jets could properly lift the weight of the power armor. This combined with the opening visor makes the power armor suits much more like Iron Man's suit than what we've seen of power armor in the past. With that little rant over, on to new lore. First, Philly, in outside interviews, is said to be built on an old landfill, and that is from whence it got its name. In a later section of this episode, we see that Philly isn't far from Los Angeles International Airport, or LAX. The closest landfill that I could find near to LAX existed in Westchester from the 1920s to the 1960s. Therefore, I believe we can assume that Philly is potentially somewhere near Westchester. Along with this, I believe that the car forest that Lucy walked through just outside Philly may have once simply been a parking lot in which a forest has grown up in the past 219 years. That last little part wasn't really lore, I just thought it was an interesting sight. Second, we learned from Ma June that Philly doesn't allow ghouls into town for whatever reason, but because of his reputation, the ghoul has managed to skirt that order. Early in the post-apocalypse, ghouls were generally shot on sight as they were all assumed to be feral. Over the decades, people learned that there were those ghouls who retained their senses even when they lost their hair and skin. Despite this, there's still a prejudice against ghouls that rears its head here and in a few other places throughout the show. Lastly, we learn of the product known as Jim's Limbs here. The equipment seems to consist of a device that chews a leg to a proper length so that a prosthetic foot can be added. In proper Fallout fashion, it appears to be dangerous, painful, and only marginally helpful. Let's cover new characteristics before moving on. First, Lucy believes in the vaults. She grew up in a meritocracy, had never seen a ghoul before meeting the ghoul, and both admires and is attracted to Maximus. Second, we learn that Dr. Siggy Wilzig has extensive knowledge of the vaults, or Vault 33 at the least. He loves CX-404 as evidenced by his horror at seeing her stabbed. He seems to be a known figure to Ma June, given her line of, "If you think this little thing can haul your limping ass across the wasteland, you may not be as smart as people say you are." Lastly, he is driven to get to Moldaver. Third, we learn that the ghoul has an extensive knowledge of power armor, likes cherry tomatoes, and has high endurance as he is seen to take some serious damage. He is shot in the back multiple times and is thrown into a staircase and a market stall and keeps going. Fourth, Maximus appears to have significant control over the power armor, but is by no means an expert on its use, and it's also clear that Lucy's attraction to him is mutual. Lastly, it's reinforced that Moldaver is prominent with Ma June's comment, "Everyone knows who Moldaver is," and we learn that Moldaver wants Dr. Wilzig. On to section 9. The ghoul restores the health of CX-404 before the two of them leave Philly tracking Dr. Wilzig. On to the good aspect. The healing of CX-404. I understood completely why the ghoul had to attack CX-404 as the dog was attacking him, but I appreciate that he healed the dog, both for the utility of it and how happy it made him that the dog recovered. On to the confusing aspects. When the ghoul brought CX-404 inside, it was still bright and sunny outside. When they leave Ma June's, it's twilight. Beyond this, the next section takes place in sunlight. This leads me to wonder if they perhaps rested a while or even overnight, and it's not twilight, but dawn that we're seeing. On to the one bad thing I saw here. There's no sign of blood on the floor from Wilzig or Ma June's wounds, only blood from the Jim's Limbs leg attachment. With how much Wilzig was bleeding, there should have been a trail of blood leading from the front porch to the table in the back, but there's only blood in the back. It's not a huge issue, but it's a mistake. I didn't see anything lore breaking here nor any new lore, so let's move on to character aspects. We learn here that the ghoul likes dogs. Though he heals CX-404 at least partially to help him find Wilzig, it's also clear that he doesn't like that he had to hurt her and is happy to see her recover. On to the 10th and last section. Lucy and Wilzig make a trek towards Moldaver before Dr. Wilzig gives up, knowing that with his wound he won't make it. He reveals that he has taken a cyanide pill before telling Lucy that she'll need to take his head to Moldaver, providing her with a saw to remove it. On to the good. First, the visuals in this scene and sound design are amazing. The eerily beautiful ruined vistas and the silence of the dead wastes are amazing. Along with this, the crashed Soviet satellite looks perfectly comical. The only problem with this satellite is that we have yet to see anything related to Red China, and I feel like this may give the uninitiated the incorrect view that the United States was fighting the Soviets. Anyway though, back to the good stuff. Second, the use of the ink spots I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire, perhaps the song more associated with Fallout than any other, as Lucy truly begins her main quest, was an excellent choice. Lastly, having Dr. Wilzig become even more mysterious just before he died and that he called Lucy Miss McLean without ever having been told her last name was very well done. On to the confusing aspects. The biggest issue here is Lucy's route. When Lucy left Vault 33 near the Santa Monica Pier, she walked north along the coast. In this last scene, we can see that as she and Wilzig left Philly, their path brought them past Los Angeles International Airport. In fact, I believe that they're on what's left of the tarmac here. This control tower in the background beside the iconic LAX terminal is found on the west side of that terminal. This means that they're heading south. Furthermore, LAX is south of Santa Monica. None of the directions they're moving add up, especially when you consider what their destination is, although that won't come up until later episodes. I didn't see anything here I didn't like or that was necessarily lore breaking in this section, so let's get on to new lore. Just one thing here, Vault-Tec Plan D cyanide pills are quick, painless, and banana flavored. We first saw this product early in the episode where the skeleton family had a bottle of it on their table, but Wilzig gave us more information about it. On to character aspects. We learn here that Lucy is willing to do disgusting things to recover her father, up to and including removing the head of a recently deceased man and carrying it with her over 20 miles to use in a trade. We also learn that Dr. Wilzig is driven to get what he has in his head to Moldaver, even if he can't be the one to get it there. Past this, we also learn that along with his previously demonstrated knowledge of Vault 33, he was aware of who Lucy was down to her last name. Alright, that should do it for episode 2. Follow me on X for lore video announcements at Gaming with Maps. My Discord is open to the public, there's a link in the channel's banner. I stream every Friday evening on YouTube, come check it out if you're interested. If you appreciate what I do here and you want to support the channel financially, you can become a member on YouTube or a patron with Patreon. I want to thank my channel members and patrons Mesothelioma, 76 at Texas, Dark Malcontent, Real76, Dr. Orion, Samsung Smart Fridge, Night Spearhead, Ahotep, Despy, Chris G059, Electric Head, and Hero Cunning for their support. I also want to specifically thank Dark Malcontent for helping with this video's script. This has been the Irresolute Cartographer. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.